Hello everyone, and welcome to the Shelby County Arts Council. My name is Ben DeLima, and I'm the Development Coordinator for the Arts Council. I am standing here in the EBSCO Fine Art Gallery, where I'm going to take you on a virtual tour and interview with artist Scott Vaughn Owen. Just to give you a little background information about the EBSCO Gallery, we hold between 5 and 6 art shows here each year. We host 2 annual juried exhibits, which are the high school juried art exhibit and the adult juried art exhibit. The rest of the shows are curated, which means one person or a panel selects the artist and theme for the exhibit. We usually find artists through patrons that we've established relationships with, and sometimes artists will reach out to us about exhibiting in the gallery. Our gallery is free admission, and everyone is welcome to view our exhibits. This is made possible from grants through foundations such as the Blue Cross Caring Foundation and the Alabama State Council on the Arts. We also have private donors who support our gallery and outreach programs. Remember, as you view the artwork, keep an open mind. A piece might seem strange or not make sense to you at first, but once you know more about the artist or their life, you will have a better understanding of their work. Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoy this exhibit. So here we have Mr. Scott Owen, one of the artists of the Southern Expressionist show. So introduce yourself, man. Tell us who you are, brother.
I'm Scott Vaughn Owen. I'm an artist. I'm located here in Columbiana, Alabama.
Awesome, awesome. So for those of you that don't know what expressionism or expressing or the expressionist term means, I'd like to ask Scott what he understands and what does it mean to you?
Expressionist art is a lot of things. When I first started painting, I realized really quickly, as I kind of spent a lifetime in and around art, that there are different types of art. There's some things that are representative, and then there are other things that are abstract, and then there's that which I call, which is sort of a little different thing. It's called expressionism. I think if you look at the terms that most art people use.
Right.
For me, and that's the only thing I can do, is expressionist art is when I take myself and put it into the work, rather than looking at something and then putting it over here and then transferring an image from one thing to another or elaborating on another image. Expressionist art for me is when I kind of let it evolve and I put myself into it. It's an extension of myself, much more than something else would be.
So how did you get started building an exhibit, and what are some of the key objectives that you try to achieve?
When I was asked to do this exhibit, it's the first time I've curated anything, so I thought about it for a long time. I mean, Bruce and I had talked about it for probably 2 years, doing an exhibit of this nature. Of course, with a new building project going on, we had to wait till this was finished. So when I started thinking about this room, and luckily I had already been in a couple of other exhibits here, I wanted to make this room, and I think the words I used was sort of vibrate when you walk in. So I approached it from that aspect. What could I do? What could I bring to it as far as the work and color and size and all those types of things that when you walked into it, you go, wow. And I was looking for a wow factor, and I hope that's what we got with the show. When I started thinking about the show, I started thinking about this room, and I was really uncertain what Mary Ann was going to bring, because I hadn't seen all the pieces. I knew she was going to bring in a lot, and I knew that we were going to kind of pick through what we wanted to work and how we wanted things to go.
Yeah.
But I also knew that I had a pretty big, expansive space, and I thought about a lot of different things, from hanging things from the ceiling to whatnot. But then time sometimes becomes an issue, so you think about what can you do, what can I give to her that we could do something that plays off one another. So I had this idea about building these uprights to kind of break up the space. That was part of the show. Is we want to draw the individual into it. So in this case, I built these totems with different size boxes. I think these 2 are the same size, and these 2 are roughly the same size. I did another set for Mary Ann, and she did her. I met her halfway between here and her home, and gave her, said, do whatever you want to do to them, and she decided to do a black and white, which I think is fabulous.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then I did this, and on this particular piece, I kind of went back And I wanted something that really had a lot of expressionism in this particular piece. I wanted something that I didn't think about, that I just kind of did, and just used the skills and the skill sets that I have and the tools that I had at my disposal to do them. So they're stacked up in my studio, and I don't believe they were stacked up in this particular order either. So I started out with spray paint, then went to, paint brushes, and then there's charcoal on it. There are a multitude of different mediums. I would spray water, I would create runs, I would do all these things. And then when I got through with it, I decided, well, let's mix it up. So what happens is these pieces don't line up exactly with what I did because some of them, if you were to twist them around like a Rubik's Cube, they would line up. But this is, I sort of broke the Rubik's Cube. Again, how can I be more creative with it? How can I do something and then express it in a different way? And that's kind of what I got. When I approach something like this, it's one of those things I kind of have to get myself in the mode to do it. It's the boxes set around in my studio. She'd already gotten hers. She'd already sent me pictures of hers completed. Thinking, I don't want to do something black and white. I want to make sure that whatever they are, that they're obviously different. So I approached this thing. So I finally got it. It was just only a week or so before the show.
Wow.
So okay, I've got to approach the thing. The boxes were built. The uprights were built, and so we had all that engineered like I wanted it. And then, all right, let's paint it. So I don't know. There was somebody I'd been watching on YouTube or that had a lot of blue in it. For some reason that stood out to me. So I started out with blue spray paints, and then these other colors, and one thing just kind of led to another. And if you'll notice it a lot, then I've got like a lot of charcoal drawings in here, and then other little diagrams of things. And I just kind of let it flow, just whatever comes out of your head and out of your body. So it becomes a real physical process.
That's so cool.
To do things like this, or even a big expressionist piece that I've done. And the work I brought to this particular show to handle a little bit differently than what this is. But this is a lot of fun to do. It's completely unrehearsed, if you would call it.
Wow.
And I think it just makes an interesting piece of art.
Yes, sir.
And these two pieces really anchored the room as far as the entire show goes. So I'm pretty pleased with the way it turned out, because you never know what you're going to get.
So how did you get started with art? A lot of people want to know that.
That's a long story. How did I get started with art? It starts out with an encouraging parent, and that's what I had. I had a mom that, when I was young, that saw my abilities. When I say young, I was very young. I was 5, 6 years old.
Wow.
And for most of my birthdays, most of the Christmases, I would get drawing paper or watercolors or whatnot. But growing up in the South and growing up in the time frame that I did, all my buddies were out playing ball and doing things like that. And I really didn't spend much time on art. And I would draw occasionally, pencil sketches and this kind of thing. And it was obvious to anybody but myself that I had a natural ability.
Yeah.
To look at something and to draw it, whether it was draw a picture of my brother, or draw a horse, or draw pictures. But I would pull things out of magazines, and I would sketch those things. By the time I got into high school, I was the guy that was asked to do the run-throughs at the football field, or the backdrops on the stage, or those kind of things. So indirectly, I was always encouraged by the people around me, not only my parents, but by other teachers, some teachers that saw that. And I grew up in a high school that we didn't have any art classes, so that wasn't something that was given. So I just had the natural ability, and it just kind of pulled at me, And so by the time I got to college, I took art. I wasn't good in math, I wasn't good in science, and those weren't the things that interested me. But art did. So, and then after a few years in college, I got a job in a sign company in Birmingham, and then one thing led to the next. Within a year or so, I just started my own sign business. But in those days, we didn't have the computers and the machines that we have today. So all this was done by hand. So we were doing illustration work that I would do very large. I mean, billboard size. Some things were 20, 30, 40 feet long that we would paint a building on. And, you know, and those were the kind of things that I started out doing, along with multitudes of other things that were, some of it was sculptural, some of it was,
Sweet. Yeah.
you know, but it was always experimental, always trying to figure out how to do it because I didn't have a teacher. You know, I had taken art lessons and classes in college that were about pottery and they were about drawing and all those things kind of gave you an idea about what I was doing, but I didn't have the materials engineering background that I was having to try to figure out. So a lot of it took research. A lot of it took picking up the phone and calling somebody in another state or another country and going, how do you do this? And, you know, and luckily I met a lot of people through organizations that would offer a helping hand and kind of lead you in the right way. And then the rest of it was trial and error. And then once you do it, you fail. And once you do it, you succeed.
Keep going.
You find ways to make things happen. And so my interest, going back to the original question, so the interest in art started out very early. It got sidetracked by making a living, but I was making a living in an art-related field.
Right.
And I'm blessed to have had those opportunities because with every client, with every customer and their needs, it forced me really hard to learn new techniques, to learn things, and to find a way to fulfill their needs, to help make those guys successful. Because I always felt like if they were successful, then I would be successful. And that worked greatly until, next thing I knew, I had employees and we were doing projects that were statewide or regional wide, some things in Florida. So a lot of things, so we were traveling around doing a lot of different projects, but all of them were, every project was usually a little bit different, whether it was a different design, whether there were color issues, whether it was materials issues. Sometimes in our case, because we were building things, we're dealing with landscape, we're dealing with all these different things that forced me as the primary owner of the business and that is the primary designer in the business to have to think through things and engineer things. So all that propelled itself and it got to be a pretty good sized little business. And then when the 2008 housing fiasco happened and all that happened, for the first time in 25 years, I found myself without any employees. And so I picked up a pencil and started drawing, and I drew pictures of my wife and my dad and this kind of thing. And then I got pretty bored with that. It was to do things like that although they were great to know that I still could.
Yeah.
There was something about it that felt like making a sign to me. I was looking at one thing and taking direction from whatever it is I was seeing and putting it in another place. So I started playing around with shape and design, just like I would do when I would draw letters, just kind of kept manipulating the shape of a face or the shape of a particular design or image or whatever, and say, okay, I can play with that, and that'll work. And then through that, then thank goodness for the internet, I started studying what other artists had done and had done and were doing in and around the world, and go, you know what, this will work. I can take and put my own brand of something on shape and color and make something unique happen. And then all the years in the sign industry, working big and working with shape and working in engineering things and working with different equipment, and I said, I can take those things and make even something that's more interesting, that nobody else can do, because I've got tools at my disposal that the other guy doesn't have.
That's right, yeah.
And that's what I tried to do in this particular show, and we can look at that, and I can tell you how I approached those and why I approached those and what I was shooting for when I tried to get there. But again, back to the original question, how did I get started in art? I had a mother that encouraged my creativity, and I had a father that wouldn't allow me to be lazy. We forced hard work upon us, whether it was, we learned to cut yards, do whatever as a young people, a young age. And then by the time I got into doing my business, the sign work or whatnot, that work ethic was already in me. And so it's work. I don't really know where it's going to go. I don't know where this is going to go. I just know that those two things together got me here. And then
good.
next things, the steps forward. And that's kind of it.
So what has been the most rewarding part of being an artist, and what has been the most challenging?
Probably the most rewarding thing that I could think of, well, there's several rewarding things about being an artist. The first one is that you learn to extend yourself. I don't know that you understand what I mean by that, but
Go ahead.
society
Take your time.
sometimes tells us that this is what we can and we cannot do. Art has taught me what a lot of what I can do because I decide to do it. And then it's just a matter of putting forth the effort in order to do that. So I get to extend myself beyond what I thought with my own parameters in life, or wherever your station is in life, or whatever that is that you feel like that you're kind of confined to do or to
Right.
be. And and so the idea when I started making art and I wanted to do it on a professional level was the first thing I had to do was change other people's opinion of who I am.
Of who you are, yeah.
And so by that, I had to change my opinion of who I am. And I started referring to myself as an artist. I referred to my shop no longer as a shop so much as it is a studio. And so I started thinking along those terms, and one thing leads to another, and I just kind of created this evolution for myself. But so that's been one of the cool things about it. And then the other thing is the way in which it's perceived. You know, I've gotten to meet so many people and to have so many great conversations and so many neat things talking about art in general, not just my work, and in how it affects people in their lives, and it's how powerful it is, and what it does for so many people that we don't realize as a society really what it does. And it can do that for what it does for me. It can do it for everybody. It teaches them what they can do, and that's a powerful place to go. Well, of course, most people say as everybody does, that there are a lot of challenging things about being an artist. It's finding time to work on my artwork when I have other things that I have to do that are part of life. Art in and of itself is a relatively selfish thing to do in a way, in the fact that you spend most of the time working alone. And I've got a wife and I've got a family, and sometimes I'm away from those guys while I'm working on it, or I find myself in my studio on Saturdays and Sundays, or at 4 o'clock on a Sunday morning, or late in an evening working on a project that I want to get finished just because I want to do it. That's tough, and I think everybody will agree that always the financial aspect of art is difficult, because everybody thinks that if you're producing something, then you have to sell it. I don't approach it that way. I don't really produce art so much as a commodity. I'm just as proud to own it myself as I am for someone else to own it.
That's good.
And so that's part of it. And then the other challenging parts of being an artist are that it's oftentimes physical. It's oftentimes lonely. And but with all that said, it's extremely rewarding.
Is there anything silly, goofy, or eccentric that you do that helps you in your creative process?
Certainly there is. It's like everything else. We have to get to a place when we're doing, especially something expressive, that you've got to let everything go. You've got to put everything else that's around you, your problems, all these things, try to let go of these things in order to truly be expressive. Or if you don't, you may lose it in the process. But I find that if I can, the first thing that I usually try to do, and I don't do it all the time, but a lot of times I paint barefoot.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what it is about, if it's a cold floor, or it's a concrete floor, or whatever it is, that's freeing to take my shoes off and then to just, it's kind of exposing myself in a way that I don't always expose myself on a day-to-day thing.
Freedom,
so, yeah, it's freedom. So I take my shoes off and work on something like this, and that's a weird thing to do, I guess, but that's what I do.
You and Marianne Casey are the honored artists of this show. What's your experience like working with her?
The experience working with Marianne has been great. When I asked her to do this show with me, I really didn't know I didn't really have anybody in mind but her. And I really didn't know who else I wanted to show with me. And it's the first ever Southern Expressionist show here at the Shelby County Arts Center. But I'd met her on a couple occasions. We had talked on 3 or 4 occasions about let's doing something together. And what I loved about Mary Ann is that she brings an enormous amount of energy to her life, and it shows in her art. And if you ever wondered that what a soul looks like that is living life, it's Mary Ann. She brings that energy, and it comes out in her every action that I've seen her take. And she's erratic at times, but she's honest and she's true, and that's what I wanted here. So after talking to her, I shared to her the pieces that I wanted to show in this particular show. Right. I said, do you think we need to add a 3rd or 4th person? She said, no, we can do this. And so certainly, I had some big pieces, and then she said, what do you want me to bring? I said, I want all your big, abstract, exciting pieces. That's really what I wanted to do. And I wanted to show that energy that she's got, and I think that's what we've got here. It's pretty cool. This is a 3D piece that I was talking to you a while ago. I have the tools to do some things that not every artist has got because of my background in my sign business. I've got CNC machines and some other things that not everyone else has got. So with this piece, I wanted to do something for a show that was this time last year, but I wanted to do a 3D piece and thought, what can I do that nobody else, that's unusual, that no one else has seen it before. So I started out with a hand-done drawing, but I drew these shapes in order to create this so-called face. Then I scanned them into my computer. I broke them apart in pieces and said, okay, I want this one to be raised further than this one, and this one to be even further in order to give it dimension. And so I created it, and then I broke it apart like a big jigsaw puzzle, went to my machine, cut out all these parts and pieces, deciding prior to that how I wanted them to build up, and then took them back and then painted them all individually, and then we built the puzzle back together.
Awesome.
That's kind of how this one developed. All right, this piece is a little bit more expressive than the other pieces that I've got in this particular show, and the fact that this one, I just really approached the canvas with nothing in mind. I came up with some charcoal. Probably, knowing me, I either started out with an eye or this nose character or whatnot, and just kind of drew it up with some charcoal. And then from that point, I just started painting. And you can see the looseness in it that you won't see in some of the other pieces. It's got colors that are thrown on there and then blended slightly with other colors, and then there's got charcoal, and there's other things in order just to create this entire piece. And it's fun to do because you really never know what you're going to get. Right. You do it, you get through it, you back up, you analyze it, you look at it, and you go, that'll work. And so that's how this piece was developed.
All right, what do we have here?
This piece is called Satan's Morning Brew, and kind of drew it just sitting at my desk one day, and just kind of, and a lot of my ideas will develop that way, just kind of doodling and making little ideas come into reality, and then I'll put them in a drawer, or I'll leave them in my sketchbook, and I'll study them for days and days and think, does it deserve to be a painting? And this is one that just about as soon as I drew it, I thought, I think it needs to be a painting. So anyway, I took it and it evolved into this size. And so I determined size and things like that by how I want the viewer to approach this particular painting. Okay. In this particular case, you really have to stand back 6 or 8 feet in order to see it and then to grasp it. But it's it's got Satan's horns. He's got this face that I think looks like he's going to get you. And he's having his morning coffee. He's just kind of screwed on at the base, and he's sitting in his chair, and it's just one of these pieces that, to me, it's got a lot of interest. And it was interesting. Yeah. Another artist friend of mine the other day saw something completely different in it. So you never know what you're getting, or what a viewer's going to see in it. It's a pretty big piece. Yeah. It's approximately 6.5 feet tall. It's about 13.5 feet long. Here I am in front of it to give you an idea of scope and size. This piece was imagined kind of instantly, as I oftentimes draw using different tools and different things in order to get different outcomes. In this particular case, I was using just the computer mouse in some software that I use, and just connecting points. So I really don't know how I got from these 5 characters, but they all seem to work well. And in this case, I call this piece Street People. This is the guy, the cool guy that's hanging out, that's making all the money, and this is kind of the crazy guy. And this is the lady of the night. This guy seems to be a guy that's cold and he's hungry.
Oh, okay.
And this fella here is he's an older guy who's lost all his money. This is his money falling out of his hands, and so he's on the street. So everybody winds up, you know. And the idea behind this was to make a social statement that everybody's got a story, and we all have stories. Some of our stories that we hear about on everybody's success, but not everybody's is always successful. Everybody here tries. Everybody here is trying, and their outcome may not be the same. But so that was the idea to try to take a piece of art and make a little bit of a social statement at the same time, make it energetic and make it fun. That it was supposed to be displayed. When I drew these things, I did them very similar to the way that I did the big piece across the way, the Street People piece. Is again, I'm sitting around in my studio one day and I'm sitting playing with a computer because I have to spend too much time in front of the computer. Yeah. And I'm playing with, just started drawing these little faces, just drawing them, and then I'd do one, do another, then do another. So I went on with about 15 of these things. And so a year ago, I decided I was going to do another show at another place, and I started looking at these faces again. I thought, man, if I put 5 or 6 of these things together, they're really kind of cool, you know, to make up this one singular big wall piece. But where would you ever show it? Yeah. And in the place I showed it the first time, I didn't have the space to do it. So when this show came up, I thought, wow. I said, what'll happen if we stack all these pieces? Yeah. So they're drawn, again, sitting there using the computer, and then I stopped and I thought, how big do I want them to be? Size is imperative here. If they're small, you won't get it. If they're not, or if they're not big enough, you won't get it. So how can so I derived at this particular size, which is like 40 by 50 inches or whatever they are. And then we stacked them up, you get it. And it's kind of like everybody's got an office or a place that they go every day, and they've got all these characters that they work with every day. So this is like the guy that's bright eye. He's watching everybody. This is the guy that he's shaped like a baseball mitt. He gets the crap beat out of him every day. Oh, wow. This is the guy, he's cool, he's a salesman or whomever he is, and he's one of them guys. He's, chewing bubble gum, telling you what he thinks. This is the engineer, he's the brain. This is the thinker. This guy, he's the boss. He's got all the answers. Boss man. You can see it, he's stern. He's got the side of himself that's all business. He's got the side that's not necessarily all business. And then this is the gossip. This is the lady she's got her eye on you, and listening to everything, and it all comes out her mouth. So anyway, I didn't mean that to be sexist. But so anyway, as a group, I think they really show extremely well. I'm extremely proud of the way this turned out. It's good. It's a neat piece. Again, and it's got they work well individually, I think, for somebody, and then they work really good as a group. So tickled to death with the way it turned out. Good.